For more than 2,500 years, the Peloponnese in the south of Greece has been a land blessed by the gods, where man lives in harmony with nature. The columns, the pediments, the architecture is powerful, yet light, thanks to a civilization which values harmony with its environment. Here, the land is fruitful. The regular pulse of the Mediterranean climate seems to have given birth to eternal serenity. This region is renowned for its forest honey. Yannis Kosafas, a 50-year-old beekeeper, has loved this profession since he was a young boy. He collects the nectar from the hives in Zakaro, his native village. This discreet and passionate mountaineer lives for the bees, and when he puts his beekeeper suit on, his heart beats like it did on the first day. Yannis has always lived here. He feels privileged to witness the evolution of his natural environment.
I had, in the past, up to 120 hives. I had the great privilege to work in a mountain that had great potential. I was able to collect the honey in winter, in summer, no matter what season. The honey was of the best quality, and we had it in abundance.
This honey, the rarest and the most expensive, is collected from the sap of the Aleppo pines. Every summer, easily controlled fires destroy several hectares. But in recent years, global warming has dramatically amplified this menace. A Friday in August in 2007 is a day like all others for Yannis's bees. The harvest is promising. They do not feel the imminent danger. A monster of such size and violence has not been witnessed in human history.
I never imagined that one day a fire would begin 15 kilometers from here, and that within a few seconds, I would have to fight so that my house would not burn. No, never. 15 years ago, we were used to fires that would appear here and there. But till now, we never had seen anything of this magnitude. We managed to put out the previous fires, but this one was extraordinary.
With their small camera, Yannis and his son go on a hill to film the beginning of the fire. Although he was panicking, he managed to keep his hand on the camera. This exceptional testimony is retold by the actual people who were there at the time. The fire is burning at more than 50 kilometers per hour. Yannis and his son Gregory must run to try to protect their house. But the fire is faster. There is no longer any electricity or water. They have to find an independent water supply, fast.
Hey?
All alone, Yanis saves his life and his house. But at Zakaro, not everyone is so fortunate. Today, the devastated hillsides unveil relics that seem out of this world to the few people brave enough to traverse them. The charred trees remain standing, like fossils. These events took place between the 22nd and 25th of August in 2007. The fire mainly hit the province of Elias in the Peloponnese in the south of Greece. The community of Zakaro and its surroundings were the most affected. In total, 100,000 hectares of forest went up in smoke. In the aftermath of this catastrophe, everything was destroyed. Trees and animals simply disappeared. The fire even pursued the unlucky residents who tried to escape. On the other side of the hill, just like a statue, is the carcass of a burnt motorcycle. A young, spirited man named Niklos thought he could outrun the fast-approaching flames.
Εδώ που καήκανε οι άνθρωποι, πού να το σπιτάτε κλεισμένο. 4 παιδιά και η μάνα και η πεθερά της και αδερφός της, αστυνομικός. Πέρναγες, έλα να πιούμε έναν καφέ, έλεγε η συγχωρεμένη. Η πεθερά της, έλα να πιούμε έναν καφέ τώρα, κλείστηκε το σπίτι. Και τώρα είναι κλεισμένο και αμπαριασμένο. Κλεισμένο και αμπαριασμένο.
And just like that, 30 lives disappeared on this street. The terrified villagers, women, children, and the volunteer firemen who tried to rescue them. The items and photos left on these modest monuments are a testimony to the deep trauma suffered by the people of Zakaro.
I come here every day, whether it's Easter or Christmas. Every day.
It's the first time Yanis has come here with Maria, his childhood friend, and with her son, Gregory. He has known most of the deceased since birth.
Here it's a grandmother with her grandchildren. We have a lot in common. A lot of the members of one family passed away. But the most tragic is the mother with her 4 children. And further down the road, there's a mausoleum to her brother. When he realized what had happened, he came here to help and ended up on fire. There were a total of 7 victims in this one family.
How can a modern country used to forest fires have allowed 30 people to die? This fire was exceptional in its size and rapid progression. But the hardest thing for these villagers was the little they had to fight with.
Most of the people who volunteered were used to fighting house fires, not forest fires. It's far more complicated. The whole village of Zakaro was going to burn, and we extinguished the fire with the help of volunteers, and with many more private trucks than fire trucks. We extinguished most of the fire, and the firemen were in charge of the remaining fires. The fire was so strong that neither of the trucks nor the planes could have stopped it. The planes could not fly because of the smoke. Because of these circumstances, the only thing that was left to do, even though the fire lasted only 2 or 3 hours, was not to go near it.
The lack of support left the residents of Zakaro alone to face the danger. They felt abandoned. Most of the villagers fled. The fire stopped only when there was nothing left to burn. Greece, on the brink of bankruptcy, no longer had the ability to finance fire prevention. In Zakaro, they had no firehouse, just a dilapidated shed, a small parking lot, and a small truck, which was a gift from a bank, but not a cent to form and train municipal firemen. Therefore, the beautiful truck will sit there unused, just like the other one from 1980 that sits at the base of the deserted shed. The economy in this region is essentially rural and is slowly dying. The fire ruined most of the farmland. The beekeepers of the Peloponnese have paid the highest price. Before, this area was a sanctuary. The sap of the pines that were centuries old produced exceptional honey. When more than 20,000 hives were destroyed, 1 billion bees were trapped in their fragile wax. Yanis's bees were not spared. Heavy-hearted, he comes back from where his hives were burnt.
After the first heat wave, after we saw that we were no longer in danger, I immediately went to check my hives. What shocked me at first was that my hives were half burned and the fire was inside them. Everything was burnt inside. The fire entered through a hole at the bottom and carbonized everything that was inside. Everything leaked to the ground. That's the first thing that upset me. I was speechless. Everything was destroyed.
3 years after a catastrophe that no one could have foreseen, Yanis still tries to understand it. The only person that can give him any answers is Dimitri Lalas, a climatologist and director of the Greek Environmental Agency.
You see, it was just like the movies. There were flames everywhere, there was smoke. It was like hell.
In fact, the wind moved the fire, but it proceeded to jump due to micro-explosions. The rising of the hot air throws the flames far, up 100 or 200 meters away. You told me that you saw a tree that exploded, all of a sudden due to heat. How far did it go?
Yes, you're right. 200 meters more or less. But what impressed me was that the fire made vortices. Imagine a fire vortex that was 200 meters in diameter.
In the absence of fire, the mountain slopes and the heat of the ground creates an upward movement. You then add fire and the air becomes lighter. That is what created this movement of air that was fast and scattered the burning wood. That is stronger than if we saw it on flat grounds. That is what the people who were burned had failed to anticipate.
The town of Zakaro is derived of a mosaic of villages embedded in massive forests perched on steep hills. These natural chimneys fueled the violence of the fire. Combined with the extreme climatic change, this made the fire totally uncontrollable. The slow rise of temperature that we have seen in the past few years has begun to be questioned by specialists.
Over the past century, the climate has begun to get warmer. Globally, the average temperature has increased from the year 1900 to today by 0.6 of a degree.
These records of increasing heat give a partial explanation to the 2007 fires. That summer, Greece had all the risk factors. Some outbreaks of fire, easily controlled in normal conditions, lit up the whole country for 3 days. Pavlos Vavlieris, Forest Services Director of the area, outlines the ingredients of this explosive formula.
In a fire, there are three determining factors: the temperature, the intensity of the wind, and the humidity relative to the atmosphere. And these three factors were at their maximum on this particular day. The humidity was exceptionally low, and the previous winter had been very dry. So the vegetation held very little water, which would have allowed it to resist the fire. The humidity in the air was only at 10%, which on a normal day would be at 30%, which is a rare occurrence. The intensity of the wind was remarkable.
On the banks of the Ionian Sea, it is normal to find such wind at the end of the summer. But this day, August 22, 2007, the wind was gusting northeast and blew more than 100 kilometers per hour. This was a storm.
At the same time, the temperature was 43 degrees Celsius. In a different situation, we would have been able to extinguish the fires, but combined with the drought and the wind, we were unable to do so. These forested areas, they were like waiting gunpowder. All that was missing was a spark, and it could have all been ablaze. Actually, it was like the region was covered in black powder, and the whole region was smoking. Unfortunately, the spark did happen, and the whole region went up in flames.
Extreme temperatures, dehydration, strong winds. The combination of these three factors generated a huge fire that devastated the entire province. The slow decline of the aridity in the south of Greece raises the fear of increased frequency for these dramatic and devastating fires. For Dimitri Lalas, the long-term climatic evolution is not reassuring.
The problem is only going to get worse. Within the Mediterranean, most of the climatic predictions show an increase of 4 to 5 degrees above the average in the next 40 years.
4-5 βαθμούς μέσο όρο. 4-5 βαθμούς μέσο όρο είναι πολύ. Δηλαδή,
4 to 5 degrees higher is a lot.
Μας πάει από εδώ που είμαστε τώρα.
It's like we would have the same hot temperature as Cairo and Aswan.
Και Ασουάν, κάπου εκεί. Εκεί έχουν τέτοιου είδους.
Over there, that's their average temperature. But here it would be worse. We have 20% less rainfall.
Κατά 20%. Όπου έχεις και υψηλές
Therefore,
θερμοκρασίες.
with higher temperatures and less rain, the possibilities of fires in the future increase.
Να ξαναέχεις πυρκαγιές θα είναι πολύ πιο μεγάλες στο μέλλον.
The beekeepers are the first to see the warning signs in the disturbance of the seasons.
The weather in our region, and in all of the south of Greece, it appears that difference in temperature is becoming more important. There are bouts of heat, less periods of cold weather, and the rainfall is becoming less and less. All of that disrupts nature, and the blooming season shifts. The bees are intimately attuned to the rhythm of nature, so they are also disrupted. They're becoming more fragile because of the rapid and brutal changes. Normally, bees evolve over billions of years. They're unable to adapt over a dozen years like this. It's not their rhythm. So what's the consequence? Of course, there is a problem with the lack of honey. But that's rather trivial to the other issues that we could encounter, such as disease. Look, we can see that some bees are unable to fly.
For the past 3 years, the regrowth of vegetation has provided food for the bees, but only during the few months of spring. For the rest of the year, as the softwood has disappeared, they wither and die. The destruction of the forest is causing starvation in the bees. Weakened and malnourished, they remain stuck on the ground and they are unable to pollinate. Without this important work, the reproductive cycle of the vegetation is interrupted. Eventually, there will no longer be any flowers, and therefore no more bees.
There are instances now of farmers paying beekeepers to move the beehives near their fields, trying to improve their results. They both work in perfect harmony. The bees cannot live without nature, nature can't live without the bees, just as Einstein said.
For the Peloponnese, it's honey, but it's also olives. More than 250,000 olive trees were destroyed. Today, the trees that gave this region its pride and fortune are slowly trying to grow back, forming small bushes that are still not yet producing. Panagiotis Kyriapoulos is an old friend of Yanis's. This olive producer lost everything. Nothing is left of the 500 olive trees which were the livelihood of his elderly parents and himself.
Black, black, black. Everything was burned. Almost all of it fell down. If there was one standing up, it was not much more than coal. In this entire area surrounding you now, in the 1920s, there were only 3 or 4 olive bushes. So the people made some grafts, and slowly they turned into olive trees. My father planted these olive trees. He planted them in the 1950s. This olive tree that I'm showing you, it goes back to the days of my grandfather's father. The circumference of this tree was as large as 5 people holding hands in a large circle. During the summer, my father relaxed under the shade of this tree. His father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, and all the generations, they all came here. We had placed a bed under this tree so that they could spend the night under the stars. At that time, it was the custom of the people to live outside from May until August. They had the vineyards below, and they used this tree as a summer home. And they slept here. When the fire started, it became a huge hollow tree. When I returned, I found an axe. The tree had always been here. My father told me not to cut it down because it would erase the memories. But what memories? It brings back bad memories.
For the people of Zakaro, the heavenly beaches will always be associated with the dramatic devastation. It was there that thousands of women and children took refuge for days while the flames invaded the province. For the lumberjack Panagiotis' granddaughters, who were young at the time, it was almost a vacation.
Θυμάσαι τη φωτιά, Δήμητρα? Ναι. Και πού πήγες, παιδάκι μου, που πήγαμε με τη φωτιά?
Όπως είδαμε τη φωτιά, πήγα στη θάλασσα. Ήμουνα μες στη θάλασσα και φορούσα και μπρατσάκια. Και μαγιό.
Πρόσεξε, πρόσεξε, πίσω πες το, πίσω.
Και μαγιό. Και περπατήσαμε και στο δάσος μια μέρα, σε ένα βουνό δάσος, και τα είδαμε καημένα όλα.
It may be 20 or 30 years before the region sees the large and prosperous trees again. Panagos, a lumberjack, has made a living from cutting trees and making charcoal for the past 40 years. Since the fire, lumberjacks are no longer subjected to the cutting quotas. It has had destructive effects.
Thousands and thousands of trees have burned. We will see them again in 150 years or more. So all these burned trees had to be cut down for the regeneration of the forest. Therefore, we find ourselves with a lot of wood, because in the past we did not cut them all. We left about 12 to 15 trees per hectare, but because they were all burned, they had to be cut down. Because there is an abundance of wood, the price of wood plummeted. Burnt wood has a short lifespan. It's already been 3 years since the fires. We have about a year to a year and a half to work with it. After that, it will be rotten, and it will be worthless.
His son has left the province, and Panagos once again climbs the mountain alone. He cuts the closest trees to the road, throws out the ones that he cannot carry, and with the wood he manages to get, he earns a few euros.
The real trees, we won't see them soon enough. Small ones, maybe. In about 30, 40 years. But I will not see them. And for everything to return like it was before, it would take about 150 to 200 years. What do you want me to do now? I'm 65. At best, I can raise goats. That would give me lambs to eat. I have 3. I cannot do anything else.
Panagos's cuttings are so trivial that it does not impact the remaining vegetation. On the other hand, some lumber companies flatten the forest in a quasi-industrial way. For them, the fires were a good thing. With a PhD in biology and as a member of WWF, the Association for the Protection of the Environment, Kostas Poriazaitis is fiercely opposed to these methods. For him, the burned trees should never be touched.
After a large fire, there is always a major discussion about how to best allow the forest to reclaim the land. Burnt trunks contain vital material for the regeneration, and therefore, if we clear them, the regrowth will be harder, and the forest will find it hard to find its nutrients. In the first 5 or 6 years, most of the trees that have fallen and decomposed will become fertile soil. I am against the idea of going into the forest with machinery that cleans and removes all the pieces of burnt wood so the forest is clean. The forest is not an arable field. Another very important point, in a burnt forest where everything has been leveled, if the rain falls heavily, the grounds are full of ravines and the water runs rapidly. The trunks slow down the precipitation. The rain falls alongside the trunks, and it can easily be absorbed by the ground.
Από τους κορμούς σιγά σιγά προς το έδαφος.
In this isolated region, there are harsh winters, and heat is generated by wood. But today, the only burnable wood is from the trees that died during the fire. The bark is burnt, and the people are used to having black hands each time they touch a log. The reserves are dwindling, and soon there will be nothing to put in the stoves.
Intelligent people, or more cunning people in the government, sent other people to gather the exploitable wood. They were greedy with what was left. and all this wood was sent to other towns where the wood was used. Nothing was left for the people in the villages, or at least just the bare minimum. In 2 years, there will be no more wood left to heat the houses, and everyone will have to leave. As there is no agricultural activity here anymore, the youngsters leave, and they leave the village. In a few years, in this village, life as we know it will disappear. There will only be 2 months in the summer where the Athenians will come to vacation here.
Before the fire of 2007, Epaminondas's restaurant was never empty. Tourists and backpackers from all around the world came to try local dishes. They were able to relax in the shade of the tall pine trees that bordered the mountain pass and took advantage of Zaccaro's charm. Today, the catastrophe has scared away the tourists. No one wants to walk along the sunburnt trail in the middle of a cemetery of blackened tree trunks. The region is numb, having been abandoned by most of its inhabitants. Rarely does anyone stay.
No, I am not leaving. Staying is the most important decision, and yet the hardest. Rather than leaving and immigrating to Australia or France, or even going to Athens, we should stay here and find something to do. It might be miserable here, but I am not leaving. It's my country. It is a place where I was born.
Adversity has made Panagiotis' community grow closer. Together they battled the fire. Together they are still in mourning. Together they hope to give life back to their native land. For the Greek Orthodox, Easter is the most important time of the year. The Saturday before Easter is the day of the resurrection. In the palm of his hand, each person protects the little light of life. Together in this martyred province, they hope for a renewal of the land. In between the dense crowd that follows the procession, Yannis prays to see, once again, his beehives under the shaded trees. Sunday morning, all the people go shopping to prepare the Easter meal. Since the fire, local products like olives, lettuce, and honey have slowly reappeared on the shelves. The beekeepers' production is still low. There is no more forest honey. They only have mille-fleurs, or thousand flowers, which is collected from flowers close to the ground and tastes plain to customers who are used to a greater variety of honey. At Yannis's home, all his family and friends are there. 3 generations would love to forget their worries and enjoy the present.
The egg is red because it's like the blood of Christ. If you play correctly when you hit the egg, you are lucky if it doesn't break.
We don't really realize it today in this village, but in a few years' time, we'll be able to treat this event, the fire of 2007, as a before and after event. Like we used to say, there is a before Christ and a after Christ.
Now we will go and see a little bit of the village. We see that the forest, you can see, was burnt down, but we hope to see it full again. We don't know if the pines will be as large when we are no longer here, but we hope all will be green. They are optimistic. He and his family have worked hard. The hives, for example, he rebuilt them. He planted more olive trees. He did a lot of things to improve his life and bring it back to the level it was before.
In Yanis's garden, his wife collects a swarm that has just escaped the hives. She has to hurry. The queen and her workers are at risk of flying away at any moment.
It is spring. It's a new beginning for all the animals. It's the same for the bees. The queen, as well as the other bees, leave the old hive and look for a new place to live. At this moment, the bees are on a quest to a fixed point. We do not want them to fly too far, otherwise we would lose them. That is why we're looking for a new place for them.
The workers and the queen are like one organism. Once the queen falls in a hive, the workers follow suit, and a new colony is born. Once it has been destroyed, there is a solution to give the bee colony a jumpstart, increasing the queen bees to repopulate the hives. Since the fire, Antolis Anaxis has multiplied his beekeeping activity tenfold.
All these hives are here to breed the queens. The stone and the colors of the beehive are organized in a particular way so that the bees recognize them easily. It's equally important to plant a tree behind it so that it can be a landmark for the bees to find their way back to the hive. Soon, we'll introduce these new queens to the hives that don't have any. Here is a hive that's only supposed to produce queens. We're waiting for them to become adults so we can transport them to a hive that has no queens. The queens and the workers come from the same eggs. It's just the food that is different. The queens feed only on royal jelly.
Pregnant queen cocoons are fixed on frames and stored in hives to act as a nursery. Back in his workshop, Antolis opens several of the cocoons. Each socket consists of a larva and her reserve of royal jelly. The nurse bee is always faithful to his post.
We can see perfectly the royal jelly inside. The bee eats pollen and honey. In contrast, as mentioned before, if they eat only the royal jelly, then they become queens. The difference between the queen and the workers is that up to 3 times a day, the queen produces her weight in eggs, about 2,500 to 3,000 eggs. We produce 8 to 10,000 queens a year.
The problem of feeding the bees is increasing. Before the fire, sap from large trees would feed the bees all year long, and the hives were sedentary. Now the bees only have the flowers to feed them. Yanis is now obliged to move the hives to where he can find the short-lived blooms.
Since the fire, I've used this area. My bees find themselves close to the fields, where they find flowers that are suitable for the production of honey. Bring them here so they can find food, which they've been lacking during the winter. Therefore, I will take them to the real forest. In the forest, there's a great variety of flowers and small bushes full of nectar. We therefore hope to find them better food. That's the trick, to find the bushes in the right place at the right time.
He needs to move the hives tonight. The seasonal migration can only be done at night when all the bees are nestled in the hives. The hives are fumigated to put them to sleep. The bees are very sensitive to sound and are nervous creatures, so this procedure should be done with a calm and steady hand. Next begins the riskiest step, the voyage. The sleeping bee villages, 50 hives, which represent 3 million bees, are moved quickly but with the utmost care. Each voyage is an adventure. They have to travel small, narrow, and winding roads through the mountain, then venture out onto rough paths with the loaded truck, hoping not to tip over. Because of the changing biotope and the disappearance of the condemned softwood, Yanis does this a few times a season. It's a race around the clock. Panagiotis also has to restart his operations as soon as possible. His olive trees are nothing more than a tangled mess of branches. He used to produce 6 tons of oil. The 40 olive trees that he has kept produce maybe 600 kilos. Not much to live on. To make a decent income, he will have to regrow many more trees with the only means at his disposal, his own 2 hands.
We trim the trees, because even if the tree is burnt, the roots are still alive, and there are branches that have begun to grow. We should trim all of this, but leave 2 or 3 branches, so that the trees can recover. After, there should be only 1 trunk, like in the past. I believe that I will never have what we used to produce. I am 52 years old, and I will be able to work like this for another 10 or 15 years. But I will never see the 6 tons that my olive trees used to give me.
All the burnt olive trees have wild regrowth. Panagiotis now has to do a graft on every branch so that it becomes productive. He has no sophisticated tools, no putty to heal the bark, and even less hormones for cuttings. It is too expensive. A lot of patience, some wood chips, and a little wet soil. This was the method used by his ancestors 2,500 years ago. Panagiotis will have to repeat the same motions millions of times and redo the grafts that did not take for the whole olive grove.
Last year, I grafted about 90 olive trees, but there were only about a dozen that took. This year, I grafted another 90 trees, and if I am lucky, they will all take. I have also grafted another 40 or 50 trees in another field, so I hope to reach a total of 600.
Some time ago, in the middle of the burnt tree trunks, Panagiotis found a new reason to hope, a little miracle of nature.
It was in May when I came to cut the trunks, and I heard the bees buzzing. And that is when I saw a wild swarm. Imagine that the trunk was standing, and the bees went through here, and we caught them. We came with some friends, and we cut the trunk. We also brought a hive to put the swarm in. We worked from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 4 o'clock the following morning.
Without the help of his old friend Yanis, Panagiotis would not have been able to start his hives. Yanis is a real beekeeper, and Panagiotis, who is just learning, hopes to start up his share of an activity that represents a large part of the Peloponnese economy. Panagiotis has stood well in the face of adversity, but where the bees are concerned, he is not very happy.
Here they seem fine. That's it, like that, slowly. There you are. Slowly, slowly. No, stop. I said to stop. Stop fumigating there.
Since they have been here for a whole year, Panagiotis has never dared open the hives. It is the first time that he will see inside.
That's the queen. There, do you see her?
That's the queen.
You see her. You see how she's different? You see her wings are different. They're blonde. When the nymphs are everywhere, then they don't allow any space between them. That means that the queen is very fertile. You see the old wax? They don't want to build up on top of it. It's spoiled and we'll have to throw it. We must change it. We'll have to remove it and put another piece of wax. The next time you have to do this, put it in the middle so that they can build on top of it immediately. Come to my house and I'll show you how to do it. Do you understand? Tomorrow bring your frames and I will help you do it. And then perhaps you'll be successful in making honey.
Panagiotis only has 2 hives. He will need at least 50 in order to produce more than 200 kilos of honey and to bring in a profit. The growing forest is fragile, like a newborn. It is even more exposed to the variances of the climate, which makes it more unstable.
The regeneration of the forest is not in itself our main concern. What scares me is the repetition of forest fires that occur too close together. That is what causes the most destruction. Since the 1960s, after the rural exodus, the fields were abandoned and were turning back to the forest, at least in this region. Suddenly, the forest grew larger instead of shrinking. That wasn't the case 50 years ago when man was using biomass as their energy source. All this vegetation, in the present condition, transforms into combustible matter. In order to prevent fires like today, we would have to change the climate and the temperature, which is hard to do, or we would have to clean the undergrowth. It is doable, but very costly. And no government would be willing to do it.
But man is not the only one that can act. Exposed to fire risk over millions of years, the forest, left to its own devices, can develop defense mechanisms to combat the fires.
A Mediterranean climate. What is it? The winters are mild and wet, and the summers are dry and hot. The Mediterranean vegetation is characteristic of its climate. It has the ability to regenerate itself after a fire. Some even think that a regeneration by fire cycle exists every 20 to 30 years.
20-30 χρόνια. Μέσα σε αυτά τα χρόνια γίνεται μια φωτιά.
There are some species that go even further. They profit from upward currents from fires to disperse new grains over new areas.
Even more surprising, in the regions where the fires are extraordinary, the pine cones protect their nuts against burning.
When the fire arrives, the cone will close hermetically. At the moment when the nut falls to the ground, the fire is already almost gone. The nut falls in the ash and waits for the first rainfall so that it can germinate.
In Greece, there is no national policy on reforestation. There are only local initiatives. These kids may only be 15 years old, but they have already seen the land change. To give nature a push, they have replanted young pine trees, objects of their care.
There is one that is growing. What do you think of it?
It is beautiful.
That means the root has taken and it has retained the water. It is growing. Who planted this one? Calliademus. Good. We will name this Calliademus. Oh, it is beautiful, this one. So beautiful. You will see. It will become really big.
It was a huge catastrophe. We were really sad.
It was then that we realized the value of all that we had lost. And then we decided to replant, to get it all back.
We found that it was the best course of action that we could have done as a school. We came here and we had an action plan. We planted several trees. It was a lesson, even though we were not in a classroom. I'm going to plant some more.
From what we can see today, 9 out of 10 trees have taken. Little remained dry. It's a great joy for us to see. If we are attentive, and if we don't have another fire, we will have the beginning of a forest here in about 30 years.
I am optimistic. You see, I think it will go better because, look, grass is beginning to grow. Over there are trees trying to grow. I am always optimistic. Sometimes I am accused of being too much so.
I hope so, Dimitri. I really hope so. Because I was talking not too long ago with a friend, and I hope we don't end up saying, just like he did, that it's always hope that dies last. Right now, a little bit of vegetation remains. I hope the future generations will see a real forest.
Yes, that is where the real challenge lies. The forest does not only exist for us, it is for us, for our fathers, our children, and our grandchildren. Come on, let's go!